It's absolutely no secret that Minecraft has had a lot of problems recently, both in the community and in the game itself. And I can't think of anyone better to solve all these problems than me, a random idiot on the internet. But in my defense, when it comes to Minecraft, I'm a generalist, a jack of all trades and a master of none. The side effect of this is that I'm not stuck looking at Minecraft from only a single perspective. This is all not to mention the fact that I've actually been playing this game for 10 years now, which is probably why I don't have a life. Self-deprecation aside, this is my first scripted video, which sadly means I have no excuse if I end up not making any sense once again. Part 1. Mob vote and why Mojang isn't lazy. A few weeks ago now, at the time of writing this script, there was a mob vote as well as a Minecraft players union attempting to overthrow Mojang and the mob vote. Now, this whole thing is actually what spurred me on to create this video, because I got absolutely ratioed in a TikTok comment section for daring to suggest that Mojang isn't lazy. And I'm still struggling to sweep up all the salt that I exuded after having to deal with my notifications filling with a mix of people calling me an idiot and people saying the same argument over and over for like 3 days straight. You wanna know what the sad thing is though? It's that I agree with the Stop the Mob Vote movement, insofar as I agree that in the mob vote's current incarnation, it nearly universally leads to disappointment. However, the cause of this disappointment is not the laziness of Mojang, but the combination of various conflicting incentives and Mojang's studio's attempts at balancing those incentives. It's really frustrating though, because the people who call Mojang lazy use a really simplistic argument that only really considers a small subset of the things that actually go into developing a feature and adding it to the game effectively. And it really only includes the time it takes to code a set of mechanics and the number of man hours at Mojang's disposal. And it has me going yeah, if you ignore all the complexity of the situation and pretend that complexity doesn't exist and only reason with half the information, then it sure does look like Mojang is lazy. Even though I think this argument is very silly, I do want to give it at least some respect, because I think the best way to try to criticize something is to understand it fully. Now, the argument basically goes, this modder over here added all the mob vote mobs in under 48 hours. And Mojang has more than 48 hours to add all the mobs, and since they haven't, then they're lazy. Before I continue, I should let you guys know that I am re-recording all the lines because the audio quality was bad on them, and I have now cut out a section where I took the argument and I broke it down into a list of premises and, agonized over every single step of it, because I knew when I was writing that in the script that it was awful, but it really crystallized just how awful it was after I had listened to it 3 or 4 times. So you motherfuckers are lucky that I'm leaving that out of the script. Moving on from that digression, I would like to simply point out that this argument makes a really silly assumption, which is that the workflow for a modder and a Mojang developer is in any way similar. To be fair, they are both similar in the fact that a Mojang developer and a modder both add features to Minecraft, but that's about where the similarities end. To elaborate though, Java modders like the one who added the penguin, the armadillo, and the beautiful, glorious crab to Java Edition only had to add stuff to Java, so you have to account for that if you're trying to figure out how long it should take. Another issue is optimization, making sure that mobs don't lag the shit out of the game for people who are on garbage hardware. The Mojang developers also have to consider how people are going to interact with the additions on mobile, controller, or mouse and keyboard, something the modders don't really have to do because all of Java's player base is on keyboard, with very minor exceptions. Modders also don't really have to worry about how their changes and implementation of those changes will affect the game progression, or rather, they still do, but the stakes aren't as high. If Mojang makes a change to the base game that screws up progression, they end up irritating millions of their users, and irritating them again if they nerf it. Mod developers don't have to deal with this because if some portion of people don't like their mod, they just won't download it, and people aren't forced to stay on an old version of Minecraft to avoid a change like with what happened in 1.9 and PvP servers. Making something is hard, and making something good is exponentially harder. As an example, in Minecraft, it's very easy to build a decent house, something that's like 60% perfect, and it might only take 15 minutes to do so. But to take that house from 60% perfect to 75% might take a whole hour, and to take it from 75% to 90%, it might actually take 2 hours, and a good amount of that time is probably just going to be spent figuring out how to go about improving it, not even just actually acting to improve it. And that's not to mention if you decide that something needs to be redone. I could go on listing things, but I'm shooting to make this video under 30 minutes long. So I'll just say that this shit is complicated because you're messing with thousands of interconnected systems and trying to guess how human behavior will interact with them. And the Mojang developers can't afford to get it wrong, a painful lesson they've already learned with 1.9. I'm a little bit ahead of schedule with the recording because apparently I've gotten a bit better at recording things faster. So I just wanted to add here that yes, I actually did that. The video you're seeing in the background is of me having built a house over the course of 3 hours, just trying to see how I can add more and more improvements to it to try to perfect it, which is something I don't normally ever do. No one put a gun to my head and said, hey, you should have a real example of you doing that. I decided to do that all on my own. And you know, even after thinking about it, thinking like, oh, this is probably a really bad idea, this is going to take forever, I still went ahead and did it. This is no one's fault but my own, I suppose. Let's see here, what were we talking about again? Wait, my script's on my phone. Why am I looking at a piece of paper? Right, there was actually a second thing wrong with that argument, which is the idea that if someone chooses not to do something that they have the time to do, that they are lazy if they do that. This idea already assumes that Mojang doesn't have a good reason for not adding the mob vote mobs. Now, before I actually address this, I just want to make it clear that I will be assuming that Mojang isn't lazy while discussing this. I feel like I'm justified in doing so, because if you were to assume the opposite while making this argument, then you would be assuming that Mojang is lazy while trying to prove that Mojang is lazy, which would be circular reasoning. So in order for the argument to work that people are making, they need to not be assuming that Mojang is lazy to start with. I want to get through this quickly, so I'm just going to come out and say that Mojang has other things to do besides add mob vote mobs. Like, obviously, 1, they have to brainstorm other features, 2, code the other features, they have to make their code readable so that other people can work on it, they have to fix bugs, they have to play test, they have to go to meetings, and anyone who knows anyone who's worked in IT knows the agony of going to meetings. And they also have to add things to Bedrock as well. And honestly, everything else I listed while talking earlier in that other big rant applies here too. And don't get me started on the fact that Mojang is a company and has to make money, and is constantly being pushed to make more and more money by the people who own it. They probably could add many, many more things if they didn't have to work on 15 marketplace promotions a year so that they can get children to steal their mom's credit card and buy mine coins. I guarantee you that mine coins were not Jens's idea. If we assume, like I said we would, that Mojang isn't being lazy, and the reason that they don't add all 3 mob vote mobs is because obviously they have other priorities that they value more, in reality, the whole reason people are calling them lazy is because they simply don't agree with the things that Mojang has been prioritizing. Part 2. I don't agree with what Mojang has been prioritizing. Here's where I'm going to exercise my bias, because while I do play every part of the game, I play every part of the game on Bedrock, the superior version of Minecraft. If by superior you mean is missing features, has dumbed down commands, bugs just everywhere, glitchy and slow interface, and massive lag caused by everything and nothing, not to mention the fact that it was optimized for a phone. I can't go a week without running into a brand new bug that I've literally never seen before in my entire life. Now, that is partly my fault, since I often push Minecraft to extremes to make things that developers couldn't have predicted, but I would just love it if my game didn't grind to a halt when items go into my inventory while it is open. I'd also love it if my inventory wouldn't just go unresponsive for no reason. You know what else I would love? If I could edit a command block on Xbox without the entire command being covered by a floating keyboard. It was broken like that 6 months ago. After they broke it by making it impossible to autocomplete your commands while simultaneously breaking their UI so you could only read a small portion of the command at a time. And they left that unfixed for an additional entire year. I have now been hamstrung trying to do commands for a total of 18 months now. So if I could be selfish for a moment, if I could decide what the Mojang developers prioritized, I would ask that they fix their buggy ass game so I'm not constantly grading against it. I personally would be willing to go an entire year without any new features just so they can spend that extra time bug fixing and optimizing so I don't have to deal with this BS anymore. In fairness, this is a very unpopular opinion. People like new features. I get it. New features are fun. I also know that since I'm an Xbox player, the issues that only really affect us aren't all that important to Mojang, and I get why. And it's partially because there's very little money in fixing it, with Xbox players being such a small affected group, and Xbox commanders being an even smaller group. And honestly, I have a better idea that I think would be a lot more popular. Part 3. Minecraft 1.4.4 Minecraft Labor of Love Update. On September 28th, 2022, the single greatest update ever made to a video game was released. Minecraft's little brother, Terraria, showed the Labor of Love update to the world. Terraria is a game often called 2D Minecraft, although this is only accurate if you regularly fight giant flesh monsters in your Minecraft world. But nonetheless, comparisons are often made between the two, which does make sense as they are both technically in the sandbox genre, although Terraria has put much more effort into the progression system than Minecraft has. The Labor of Love update in Terraria was supposed to be Terraria's final update, like every other update, and it basically centered around smoothing out the rough edges of the game, basically fixing all of the systems that cause friction in the gameplay experience. None of the changes really decreased the difficulty in terms of the skill required to advance at each stage of the game. What they did make less difficult was every single task that was either annoying or frustrating. They also made it so all the tools necessary for deftly modifying the world were obtainable really early in progression. The game stopped forcing you to beat more bosses if you wanted to build something cool. You could do it all just fine. You would just have to sacrifice defense or some other ability while you're building, which is fine because you weren't really fighting bosses while you're building your house anyway. And interestingly, this change didn't make it so that improving your tools later in the game was pointless, because having a better pickaxe would actually free you from having to specialize into mining speed while in dangerous areas. One of the biggest quality of life improvements that they ended up adding was the shimmer. This allowed you to avoid grinding the same event 20 plus times to get a single item that you wanted, and also allowed you to get access to mob drops that you would normally have to spend hours grinding for. This is because you could transmute one item into another item, which meant if you had its opposite, then you could get the item that you wanted. Anyway, the important thing is that they paid attention to the things that were frustrating people about the game and simply fucking fixed them. The Labor of Love update was the quintessential quality of life update, and I have never had more fun playing Terraria than I did immediately after it. They realized that something being difficult doesn't actually mean it's fun, and that there's a difference between difficulty that challenges the player to get better and difficulty that challenges the player's patience. An issue that I have when I play Minecraft and Terraria is that I often lose interest after beating the game. This problem is worse with Terraria since the design ethos is actually centered more around game progression instead of building. Terraria's Labor of Love update taught me the lesson that vertical progression is often less engaging than horizontal progression, and that, for a sandbox game, quality of life features should not be locked to the ends of progression. I shouldn't be forced to build a mob farm as soon as possible to get an efficiency 5 pickaxe so that I can mine at a decent speed. Locking all these things like shulkers, beacons, and good enchanted tools into the late game with no ways to compensate for not having them means you are practically shoved into speedrunning the game to get to that point. However, spending hours grinding to get to the end toward a predetermined goal trains you to seek predetermined goals. After all, that's what you've been doing for the last 5 hours, meaning when you get to the other side, everything seems pointless. A while back now, I made a rework of parts of the progression system using commands. I made monsters harder to deal with and redid the armor to be specialized to do certain things depending on what armor you had on. Basically, gold armor gave you regeneration, chain gave you haste, leather gave you speed, iron was basically just iron, and netherite and diamond made you heavy and reduced your mining and movement speed. Were there problems with this new game mode that I made? Yes, I added missiles that would chase you down and I still get anxiety in open fields to this day. But what I will say is the fact that the armor sets gave different bonuses actually made the game very interesting. I wasn't just putting on the best armor, I was having to decide when I went to the nether, for instance, am I going to wear iron armor for defense, or am I going to focus on chain so I can mine faster, or am I going to do gold to defend against piglins and get some regeneration? Not to mention, I actually had good reason to enchant weaker armors. For instance, a full set of gold armor is great in the nether, greatly improving your survivability with regen, making you colder, and giving you fire resistance if the full set is worn. Now, do I think that the greatness of my genius is only rivaled by my immense humility? Yes. Does that mean that Mojang should do exactly what I did in this case? No. My changes won't work for everyone, especially harming existing surfers who would have to deal with people suddenly gaining superpowers. And since I built the system to change the survival experience, I never considered how it would affect servers because it wouldn't be used on servers. And I designed it specifically to make the game more difficult, which is only desirable for a small group of masochistic nerds. But I do think there is something to be learned from this rework. One is that it doesn't actually hurt the game to allow people to do things at a reasonable pace early on as long as it comes with an engaging trade-off. As of right now, in order to do a large project on my survival world, I had to go and defeat the Wither in order to get a beacon, which required hours of mining and grinding to get the tools and weapons and armor to do it safely without risking losing all of my stuff, and the time spent grinding for the resources to build the base of the beacon on top of it. And all of that time and effort just so I can have haste? Now, if I could have made like a haste potion by, say, combining a speed potion and a copper ingot or something like that in a brewing stand, and if potions lasted a bit longer and they could stack to 16 like they were going to in the combat snapshot several years ago, I would have spent my time making a bunch of potions for my building project and had started the project several hours earlier. I would have had more fun, and I still would have had a reason to get beacons later to allow permanent buffs in areas that I've built up, and even after I had beacons, the potions would still be viable for when I'm in a new area where I maybe don't want to build a bunch of infrastructure. If you look at Terraria as a case study, you will find that there are many different ways to increase your productivity besides just vertically scaling your pickaxe's mining speed. If Minecraft took a note from Terraria and allowed people to scale out sideways by finding new ways to boost their abilities, it would make progression feel much more engaging, and it would allow players to take a slower pace through the progression system, focusing more on the point of the game, which is making things. And in Mojang's defense, they have been trying, at least a little, with the turtle shell helmet allowing you to breathe underwater, gold armor pacifying piglins, leather boots allowing you to walk on powdered snow, and the trident being a great way to move around and doubling as a weapon. They've suggested a few more things like the bundle, potion stacking, which I talked about earlier, and the crab claw, and that's why I wanted the crab to win, because I was hoping it would signal to Mojang that players wanted more things like the crab claw. The thing you might notice about all the features I listed is they have a bit of a problem, which is that they're all too niche to actually be useful most of the time, with the exception of the trident, but even that is too bad at being a melee weapon to replace a sword since you can't enchant it with sharpness, and too bad at being a ranged weapon to replace a bow since it can't have power, with impaling only affecting mobs that are touching the water in Bedrock and only aquatic mobs in Java. Mojang has the right idea with these kinds of features, but they're being too conservative with their use cases, I think fearing if they make them too good that it will break the entire system, so in response they just default to making them nearly useless. In my opinion, Mojang needs to be willing to take some risks when adding new interesting ways to progress, with the understanding that they can and will nerf something if it's too powerful. Mojang needs to let go of the design philosophy that building at a large scale and good mobility need to be locked to the endgame in order to encourage people to engage with endgame content. This is because that idea fundamentally discourages people from engaging with exploration and building until they've already sunk hours into beating the game, and have a world that is full with only the most practical builds, because they were discouraged from putting in the work to make it look good in the first place, because every block they mined reminded them that they could be doing it so much faster. That is what the Labor of Love update did for me in Terraria. It allowed me to slow down and enjoy the game, and that is why Mojang should learn from Terraria's example. Part 4. The existential horror of game development under late-stage capitalism. Since my decision to make a shitty video essay was inspired by the likes of Dan Olson, Jacob Geller, and H. Bomber Guy, who actually make great video essays, I feel as though it's my duty to explain how the problems with Mojang are entwined with capitalism and the profit motive. If you're my father watching this, you can just end the video here since you'll be strongly disagreeing with me anyway. But my point is very simple, although it really shouldn't go unstated when discussing this topic. It being that since our global economic system is capitalism, at time of recording, and since Mojang is a business, it has to make money. Now, a complete and utter dweeb might make the argument, let's say for the sake of argument that Mojang makes a better product. Well then, hypothetically, more people will buy that product. And obviously, if more people buy the product, then hypothetically, you would make more money. Now let's say that instead, you make a worse product. Let's say that fewer people buy it because of that. Therefore, you'd make less money, right? Therefore, logically, Mojang has to make a better product to make more money. Therefore, capitalism is good for Minecraft. Checkmate, liberals. Facts don't care about your feelings. Okay, so while this sounds okay in theory, in practice it's often not true. Take Minecoins for example. Why did Mojang add Minecoins? Well, probably because Microsoft told them to. Well, why did Microsoft tell them to, even though people universally hate microtransactions? Because it makes them more money. So if you're one of the higher-ups overseeing the Mojang development team for Minecraft, are you going to tell them to spend time to take risks to improve the game? No. If they risk changing the game too much, they might lose money. Are you going to tell them to focus their time on bug fixing to get Bug Rock in working order? Of course not. Bug fixing does not generate as much hype as adding new stuff. And hype gets more people to buy the game, which makes them more money. If you're a higher up at Mojang, are you going to allow people on console Bedrock to have access to other people's creations or mods for free? No! What are you, dumb? That would be so stupid. You would be choosing not to squeeze your players for every dollar they have, and that just isn't profitable. Time and time again, people criticize the developers at Mojang, the workers, for the things that are the fault of the wealthy people who own Mojang. Mojang developers, like every other working class person in this economic system, are incentivized to act in certain ways that aren't always in the interest of the consumer. Part 5. Conclusion. The Mojang developers are good, hard-working people, and shouldn't be blamed for being in a no-win situation. If you're going to blame anyone, blame the people in the corporations that value money over art. And if you want to do something about it, I don't know. Try joining a real union or something, instead of creating a fake one to attack a group of people who make something that you love. So yeah, that's the end of the video. As of recording this, I still haven't done all the video yet. I still haven't actually set that all up. I have just now finished re-recording the audio. I have been working on this thing for over a week, which has given me a newfound respect for people who make YouTube videos, right? Proper ones. Not like the shitty pieces of garbage that I normally make. Because this shit takes fucking forever. The thing is, it's kind of scary because I have like zero illusions that this video is going to get any more than like 30 views total, because one, it's taking me a while to get it out, and two, it's not particularly well made, even with all the effort I've put in, because I simply don't have the resources nor the skills to do it effectively. Probably better than what some 10-year-old would throw together, but not really, on par with any of the video essayists I'm emulating here, or trying to emulate. So yeah, thank you for making it this far into the video, if you're one of the few people who did. This took me a very long time to make, as I've already said, and it's cool that you've decided that you can put up with my voice long enough to make it. What does that say? I don't know. I don't know what the ending timestamp is going to be, but right now I have 24 minutes recorded, which is actually less than I had before. When I originally did all the audio for the video, it was nearly 30 minutes. So it's a lot better now. Got that reduced. I think I'm completely out of things to ramble about. So make like a, what's the joke? It's make like a influencer vampire, and not vampire, influencer werewolf, and like and subscribe. Yeah, there's no way anyone gets that. I think I stole that from Tumblr too. Not that I use Tumblr. I do that thing that that normies do, where they get their memes secondhand on TikTok like 2 months later, or originally YouTube. Anyway, I've been talking for way too long. Goodbye, and have a great rest of your day.